And I take the Jihadist player. Right, so the first is a US event, Tahrir Square. And this is the Jihadist player. He is playing first. He will always start the game. Right, so I'll take it slow at the beginning now for the bot. We need to figure out if he plays the event or he plays for operations. And if he plays with operations, we need to figure out what the heck he's doing. So the first question, of course, this is a US event. It says here, so the Jihadist bot will never play this card, never. The game works like this, which is different from the two-player game to the solitaire game, is that if the bot plays this card for operation, he do not have to trigger the event, while I, as the player, will have to trigger the opposite event. So if I play a Jihadist card, I have to trigger the Jihadist event and in order to get the operations value on that card. That's bad for me as a US player, but the bot sort of, because the bot can't really evaluate the how the impact of the event is going to be, because that's situation dependent. So he can't evaluate that, so he will just skip that altogether. You don't have to fire the US events. But now he's looking at this and saying, this is a US event, I'm not playing it. So he will go in this direction. This is not a playable non-US event. Events can be US, Jihadist, or independent, unassociated, if you like. It's called unassociated. So that's why it says non-US event. Everything but US events, you go this direction. US event, you go here. Or if you cannot play the other types of events coming up. So is this a playable non-US event? It's not. Then can we do a major jihad in countries where there are poor governance levels? Well, in order to do a major jihad, you have to look at the old sheets, which is still valid, of course. And it says, well, if you want to do a major jihad, you have to do it in a non-Islamist ruled Muslim country, but you need 5 more cells than troops. And it tells you how to do it. This is nice because it sums up all the operations a Jihadist player can do. On his turn he can recruit, he can travel, or he can plot. Recruit is getting more cells, travel is moving the cells about and putting them into sleeper cells, which makes them harder to remove. Then you can plot, and plot is one of the key mechanics in the game. One of the plots can be weapons of mass destruction if he can get hands on those weapons. His hands on that. Then he can do a jihad or a minor jihad. And when he worsens the governance level, you can see that. Or he can do a major jihad where he tries to make an Islamist rule country. And that's it. That's basically all he can do. So now he tries to do a major jihad. 5 more cells than troops. Now, this is the beginning of the game and we don't have any countries that qualify. So then he will ask questions about funding. We'll go here now. He will ask questions about funding. Is the funding tight? And tight is the leftmost box on the funding track. This one. This one. But no, the funding is not tight. It's not that bad. It's bad, but not that bad. No. Are there any cells in good or fair Muslim countries where jihad success is possible? Not a major jihad, but a small jihad. Well, look at this. The target for a jihad are Muslim countries that has cells and are not under Islamist rules. And for each role, the cell has to go active. Yeah, and indeed there are countries which qualify. Disregarding the poor countries, we see that there are 2 countries that are good or fair, and one of them actually has cells in it, and that is, of course, Pakistan. And I say, of course, because Pakistan has a high priority in this game for a Jihadist player because of the weapons of mass destruction there. So yeah, it's possible. The flowchart says, well, if that's possible, do it. And there are 2 cells here. And that means that he can potentially try this twice in Pakistan. But in order to make that happen, he has to pay operation costs. But lo and behold, this is a 2 operation value card, so he can actually try this twice. And since he has 2 cells, he will roll twice. So basically, he has to roll now to get a lower or equal score to the governance level. So he has to get a 1 or a 2 on the die, or the dice, every try. And I have to say how many tries I do before I roll. Now, if there were reaction markers here, then he could deduct 1 on the dice. If there were 2 reaction markers, he would deduct 2 and so forth. So these are significant when it comes to jihad. If there were awakening markers, it would be more difficult for him to make jihads, because then he would add 1. But as it is now, he will try twice. These cells has to go active, making them a little bit easier to be removed. No, both are failures. Nothing happens because he rolled too big, or too high. Sorry, he rolls too high. Okay, so we can breathe. Whew. And remember, we played that card. I just put it here so I remember that I need to play 2 cards before it's the US player's turn. And he plays the next card. So this is an Ebola scare. It's a 1 operation value, and it is not associated with US or the jihadist player. Again, we could consult the chart. Is this a playable non-US event? Oh, and yeah, it may be. I need to read the card first. I haven't read the card, so I can't tell you yet. It certainly is a non-US card, so maybe it's playable. It says, if jihadist play, so World Health Crisis Response for the Ebola scare. But if the jihadist plays it, as it does now, then US randomly discards 1 card. Yeah, he can play this, no problem. He will do that. It's a lapsing event. And remove. Remove means you take it away from the game. So if you reshuffle the deck, this will not come up twice. I'm just playing a 1 deck game. I'm not even going to play through the entire deck, so I'm not removing it. I'm just putting it in the discard pile. Lapsing means that it will stay in play this round. But that's more if the US played it, because that has a lapsing effect. So I don't have to put this marker on now, because I will play this card, or the jihadist player will play it. He will play the event, and this is an unassociated card. Yes, so he will actually get the ops value to the jihad reserves, and he can use that in a later turn, as soon as he can actually. The US player will randomly remove a card. This one. It's a 3 operations jihadist card, so it's good and bad. It's good that it was a jihadist card. It's bad that it was a 3 operation. Let's clean this up. This goes into discard pile. So the jihadist player gets a 1 operation value in his reserves because it was a 1 operation card. Good for him. I'm going to play this card. This is the trade embargo card. And Iranian enrichment capability prompts sanctions from the world. It's a 2 operations value. I'm playing it for the event because the event says that I would block this card safeguard, block NPT safeguards ignored, which is a card. And I can remove the Iranian weapons of mass destructions, and I get a +1 prestige if I do that. And Iran may resume oil exports, mark and remove. So I will do definitely that, because now there's 1 less weapon of mass destruction in the game. And that's good for the world. Since I now successfully stopped the nuclear program of Iran, the world thinks I'm a hero, so I go up 1. I put down the marker trade embargo, so I will remember this. But it's put up here in the events in play box. It's very hard to remember. I leave the card close by, so I remember that there's something going on here. Yeah, I'll leave it here. So that was important for the US player to stop, or to have 1 less weapons of mass destruction in the world. So no, Iran is not such a target, but it can become an oil producer. And if you remember, the significance of being an oil producer is that if there are cards coming into play, they will increase the value here of the country, the resources of the country, and that could influence the track here with the resources, depending on which rule the oil producing countries are under. US still have one more card to play though. Well, I'm not sure if it's wise or not, but I'm going to play Popular Support, which is one event that does something with the Awakening marker. Yeah, this is a card, this is a protester icon, and in some games, some scenarios, you will see the deck with these cards here. So now you get Flames of Freedom and Oppression spread. So I can place one Awakening or one Reaction marker, and I'm obviously going to play Awakening marker as the US player in any country which already has one of the same type, and then another in an adjacent country. Now, right now, at the beginning of the game, and that's also the reason why it may be not so smart to play it early, but in the beginning of the game there's only one country here now with an Awakening marker, but that goes to +2. There's no limit to Awakening markers, by the way. And I can also do that in a neighboring country, and I'm going to take Morocco, because that has a higher resources. If I can get that to ally, that's good. Now, I placed a marker in Morocco, and I need to test Morocco to find Morocco's governance level. Just very quick, when you roll for governance, a 3 would mean it's a poor, and it will always come into play as a neutral. So Morocco is a poor neutral, but it has a +1 Awakening. So it should be easier for me to get it into an ally. Well, we need to track these here, so the poor Islamist country numbers goes up to 4. So one thing we need to remember is that every time, I'm just putting down an example here, every time a country improves its governance level, say from poor to fair, then we need to remove one Awakening marker if there is one in the country, signaling or signifying that the movements in the country are somehow becoming a little bit more satisfied. And the same is true if it goes the opposite direction, then we remove one Reaction marker. Now if you go all the way to Islamic rule or to good, then we do something called convergence. And then we roll for neighboring country where either Awakening or Reaction marker, if it becomes Islamist rule, can spread. So the things happening in this country will then spread. The idea sort of spread out in the world. And that's how the player can control a little bit about these markers, Awakening and Reaction markers. Okay, shall we do another round? Yeah, there's a little bit more I want to show you, so maybe if the bot does it. If not, we will just talk about it, I guess. So what does the Jihadist guy do? IEDs, yes. So he will always play the event if he can. So play if a cell is in a regime change country with troops. Afghanistan qualifies for this. Or if there's a civil war country, which is another state that the country can be in, which we haven't talked about, and the civil war country has troops. And US has to randomly discard another card. Fantastic. It's not fantastic. Well, Afghanistan is a regime change, their troops themselves. Then it was good that I played this card that I did. This Awakening thing, or remove the weapons of mass destructions. So let's see, I now have to remove Benghazi Falls. That's card number 1. Card number 2. Of course, it's Iranian elections. Double good that I was able to remove the weapons of mass destruction here. Because now this is claims of election fraud sparks protest. And the bot says that this is not a US event, so he will play it if he can. So I will flip the Iran country mat to Shia mix. And then place 2 Awakening or Reaction markers. Is going to be Reaction markers, obviously. And then one of the other type there. This is and set the country to fair adversary and -1 funding. The game also, I think I should mention, comes with this sheet here, which you can go in and see if there's special instructions for any card. So this is card number, what was it? 223. And yep, because this is not an all good card, it has instructions. Yeah, of course, it places 2 reactions and 1 Awakening instead of doing the opposite, so that's fine. We knew that already. Iran is flipped. And it's becoming 2 reaction, 1 awakening. Governance level is fair, but it is adversary to the US. But now at least we get -1 jihadist funding. Assuming they use some resources now to influence the Iranian election, and the card is removed from the game. I'm really worried about Pakistan with the weapons of mass destruction. So I'm going to play factional infighting for the event, which says that I can activate 1 cell and remove up to 2 other cells in a single Muslim non-Islamist rule country, and -1 funding. And I'll do that to the full extent that I can. I will do that in Pakistan. So funding is now down to 4, and we see 2 cells popping up now in the tight box. When the bot played the Iranian election, I forgot to add the ops value to the reserves. And it's a little bit special because the jihadist player does not lose the reserves between rounds. So we can keep them for a while. So I'm going to play an event again. It's a little bit boring, I guess, driving the games only with events, but this is a very good event because now, and it also will demonstrate a new thing with the game. Now I can place a total of 4 militias, this is the Gulf Union, in or adjacent to one of these countries, but not in Iran. Gulf states, Saudi, Yemen, Jordan, or Morocco. Or repositioning militia within the border of these countries. So I can place 4 militia. Yes, and that's good because they count as troops when it comes to hindering major jihad, for instance, or when removing cells, although they are less effective. And they do not count as troops for events for events that has a prerequisite of troops before triggering. So I'm going to place these now in, actually placing 2 in Saudi Arabia because it has a 3 value there, so it may become important. Let me see. This is Gulf states, and adjacent to Gulf states is Pakistan, and I'm going to place 2 militias in Pakistan because I don't want those weapons of mass destruction falling into bad hands. I need to test Saudi Arabia. Aye, that's 2. It's poor neutral. So we can see down here that it goes up to 5. And US has played 2 cards. Back to the jihadist player. So this round we saw that the militias came out and they protect against major jihads because the jihadist player need to have 5 more cells than troops there. And for that check, militia counts. So already now in Saudi and Pakistan, it's going to be difficult for the terrorist. I'm just going to call him terrorist, the bot, not jihadist. The terrorist guy to make a major jihad. And it's also good because if a major jihad is successful with troops in the country, you get a prestige loss. If you have militia, you don't get it. Same if plot goes off and there's troops there, you get prestige loss. People think that you really should be able to avert it if you have military station there. But you don't get that loss if you have militia. Although they can help to avert the plot. So it's good. Good troop types. And it gives more flexibility, I think, for the US player now. It's great. I like that addition. Actually, I like all the additions. I really enjoy this game and these additions. So just for fun, another round. Oh, look at that. That's interesting because now this is training camps and this is an event, and it will the terrorist will play the training camps. So it says place training camps in a tested non-good Muslim country. While this is on the map, or the training camps is on the map, and the training camps look like this. Then 3 or 5 if it's in a caliphate country. We haven't seen any caliphates yet. Additional cells are available to recruit in the 9th box of ample funding. So it has to have really a lot of funds in order to get the training camps working fully. And I can place 2 cells there now, and I can auto recruit. Easier to travel to, and I can remove the training camps if the host country becomes good or if there are no cells or cadres there. So where do we place these training camps? Well, look at the card number 196 and check if there are special instructions. You will place this in a non-auto recruit country. Yeah, so it's not going to be in Afghanistan because there's auto recruit there due to regime change. And we're going to use the recruits and travel to priorities table. That's excellent because that's new as well. When you do a recruit or travel to operation with the bot, you go through this flow chart and then you come to a selection. If there are multiple possibilities in that box, you will use the priorities table to find out how to sort those priorities. And now we are going to use this priorities table directly as ordered by the card. Recruit and travel to priorities. And that's the yellow one, so we start here and we go down, and you can actually go down all the way down here. But first is not Islamist rule country. Yeah, there's multiple, of course. Then it's going to be Pakistan, unless there is no arsenal in Pakistan. So Pakistan is pretty high on this list. Pakistan is fair, and that is non-good. So as a response to the militia activities in Pakistan, the terrorist player is placing training camps there, and he can place 2 cells here as well. Okay, isn't that fun? So you see, Pakistan is a center of focus for the terrorist player. Now I'm going to actually going to put the 3 cells. Oh, let me see here. So yeah, I'm taking the 3 cells off the side here. It could be 5 if there was a caliphate, it's not. So the 3 cell, and we put them here in the 9 box. The US Special Forces, this is a US event, so he will not play it. So now, right off the bat, because we can remember that the next question is, can we do a major jihad? And there is no place that there are 5 more cells than troops and militia. So no, there is no major jihad possible. Let's continue with the flowchart then. So no major, so no major jihad possible. Is the funding tight? No, it's not. It's moderate. Just. Are there cells in good or fair Muslim country where we can do a jihad? Yes, there is. There are actually 1. We can still try to make a jihad success roll in Pakistan, because that's a good and fair country. This is a 3 operations value. No, it's not. Sorry. It's a 1 operation value card, meaning the jihadist player can try once, but he has the reserves, remember? The maximum number he can do this now in Pakistan is 2 times, meaning he will use the card and 1 of the reserve points. So he's going to roll twice in Pakistan to see if he can get it over to becoming poor. So they will have to go active, and actually I did a mistake when I failed. Last time I should have removed the cells when I failed. So sorry about that, but yep. They go active and they will try twice. 5 and 4, that's higher than 2, so no chance. And both fail, so they go back to the funding track. 2 cards for the jihadist player. The US player has only 2 cards left. So if I play Snowden for operation value, I have to fire the event. But the US player has the option to keep his last card and chuck it. And I think I'm going to do that with Snowden, because then I have to put Germany opposite to US posture and remove 2 prestige, and I really don't want to do any of that. I do have Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, which is the leader of ISIL. I can only play it if there is a caliphate on the map. It's not, but I can use the operations value for 2 operation. Now, the way that US conducts operations is a bit different than the jihadist player. So I have to check, or the US have to check the governance level, and I have to play as many operations as the governance level is. So if I want to, and I think I will try to do something in Pakistan, I have to play a 2 operations card. So that's good, because this guy is a 2 operations card, so I'm playing it on Pakistan. I can play it in a neutral or an ally Muslim country. And Pakistan is neutral at the moment, so that's good. So I want to roll on the War of Ideas table here, because for each success I will shift neutral to ally or improve ally's governance level by 1. Now the way this works is that if the country is neutral, then it will shift towards ally. And only when it gets to ally can it change the governance level. So if I'm going to try this in Pakistan, I will try to shift it towards ally. But if I'm going to try this in the Gulf states, I'm going to try to shift to a good governance level. Or I must do that. That's how it works. So we roll here. And the only modifiers is that I will check the global war on terror relations. We both viewed it, but it's hard, and it's hard as well for me. So there is, both the US and the world has the same view on terrorism, so there's no effect here. Could have been a penalty if the world was soft and US was hard. Then I have to check my prestige. And if there are any aid markers in the country, there are not. Or if there are adjacent good allies, there are not. So only the prestige will influence the roll. US prestige is here 8, and that gives a +1 on War of Ideas. Let's do that. Rolling high, I hope. 4, 5, or 6. That is a 4 +1 brings it into a 5. That's great. Pakistan now becomes an ally. So if this country, let's say that Pakistan prior to my roll had an awakening +1 marker, that would have helped my roll with a +1 modifier. But I shifted, I didn't improve my governance level, so nothing would happen to the awakening marker. I shifted my alignment to ally. They would still be there, but if the governance level improved, then the awakening marker would go away. 1 would go away. They sort of are happy that the governance level, something in the country has changed or improved. Now we're just an ally to the US, and that doesn't really matter too much from the Pakistani viewpoint, or the people of Pakistan, I guess. The last card that the US player has is the Snowden, and I will not play it, so I will chuck it away. I can do that as an option. The last US card can be chucked away. The Jihadist player has 2 more cards. Censorship is played. This is an event, and it is playable. Checking for special instructions. There is no special instructions. What does it say? Remove up to 2 awakening markers from a single country. Blocks the play of Facebook until the next play of a card called smartphones. So Facebook cannot happen until we get smartphones. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, so they will play the event. Remove up to 2 awakening markers from a single country. So then, if there are, so the question is that, of course, so if there are no instructions, special instruction, how do we choose the priorities? And actually, we do that by looking at the jihad column, because it also says marker underneath, and this is a marker thing. You can place markers, or remove markers in this case. So how do we choose? Well, first we drop that, because it's not a jihad. Then we go, let's do this in Pakistan. Well, there are none of these markers in Pakistan. Are there any countries with aid? No. Are there regime change countries? Unless there are no troops. There are regime change countries, but none with awakening markers. Highest resource is the next option. Well, the countries that are eligible with markers is Iran with a resource of 2. And Algeria and Morocco with resource of 2. So still, we can't settle. There are multiple choices. Then, are there any troops anywhere? No, there are not. Then do it in Iran, unless there is no arsenal. And there is no arsenal now in Iran. We took it away, so Iran is not a priority anymore. Then we're down here. Most cells. There are no cells in any country. Adjacent to Islamist rule, there are none. Are there any oil exporters? And there are. Well, both Algeria and Iran are oil exporters. So one of these countries, and the chart cannot help me decide, so I will roll a die to randomly determine it. But if I think about it, no, I can't say that one is better than the other. So I will roll. If my logic will dictate that one is better than the other, I would probably choose that country and help the AI a bit. But let's see, on a 1 to 3, it's going to be Algeria and Tunisia. On a 4, 5, or 6, it's Iran. And that's a 6, so that's Iran. Iran removes the 1 awakening marker. Then we play censorship marker, so we remember that's in play. I won't remember that, I'm sure. That's one of my problems. And we end that. No, we don't end. There's one more card for the Islamist player. Oh no, it's Pirates and Jihadist Skim Gulf of Aden Thievery. Or Aden. Play if Somalia or Yemen is poor and adversary. They are not. They could be poor, but they're not adversary. Or under Islamist rule, they are not. So this is not playable. So then he will look for the operations value. Let's check the flowchart. So this is this a playable non-US event? It's not. Can we do Major Jihad? Nope. Is the funding tight? Not yet. Are there any cells in good or fair Muslim country where we can successfully roll for jihad? No, they're not. In Pakistan, we removed the cells because of the failed jihad. So we come to that. Are there any poor Muslim with 1 to 4 more cells than troops and militia where we can do a jihad successful roll possible? No, there are not. In every country which has cells, we also have troops. More troops than cells. All right, no. Is the funding moderate? Yep, it is. Yes. Is the prestige more than 1 and there are active cells with troops? Prestige, US prestige is more than 1, but none of the cells we have are active. They are sleeper cells. So no. Are there any available cells? There are. Well, then we do recruit. And we do it to the maximum extent possible. We do it for the 2 operations. We do it for the 2 operation value here. And we will use the last jihadist resource there for 3 recruitment. Where do we recruit? We don't use the priority tables yet. We go here. We recruit in poor Muslim with 1 to 4 more cells than troops where jihad successful roll is possible. Remember, for a jihad roll to be successful or possible for a success, are there 1 to 4 more cells than troops? And there is not in no country. Share. If recruit, yep. Auto recruit. All right, we'll do auto recruit with best jihad die roll modifier. So the training camps is lost because he loses the training camps when there are no cells there. Pakistan, and he will then auto recruit in Afghanistan. These training cells goes away. There are no more cards to play. And I will go through the end of round. So what we do then is, of course, check this here. We go -1 funding, minus another if the fracking event is in play, or +1 if pirates is in play, but none are in play. So funding goes down. I think he has to do something with his funding. It's down to 3 already. So effectively he cannot place more cells now. Well, US will lose prestige if any countries are under Islamic rule. They are not. Then we get +1 prestige if there's same global war on terror, and at 3. It's not, it's just on 1. We put the reserves to 0. Reserves are already at 0. We will only put the US reserves to 0. The Islamic player would keep his if he had more, but he doesn't. Alright, here is the world view, and the world view is the same as US. It says further up, sorry for that, it says +1 prestige if we have the same global view or global war on terror, and at 3, but it's at 1 and not at 3. Right. Then it's interesting. Well, the plots that have been played are returned to the pool. No plots have been played. But then you have polarization and attrition. Flip it. Now we have to look at every country and determine the difference between the reaction and awakening markers. If there are +3 in any direction, then the alignment is actually moved one box towards that player's side. So if there are 3 awakening, then the alignment will shift from neutral to ally, or from adversary to neutral, for instance. And the opposite if there are reaction markers. So that's cool. It's like a public, or like the people are demanding something. If there are exactly 2 markers difference, then we add 1 more. And if there are 1 or 0, then we don't do anything. Like here in Morocco, there's a awakening +1, so this is not a big enough movement for anything to happen. But the neighboring country has a +2 marker, and there is no reaction marker, so there's a net +2 difference. So that means that there is another awakening marker coming in. So now the people have sort of picked up momentum here. To balance things out a bit, Iran has the opposite situation, where he will add 1 reaction marker. There's a public movement now towards more Islamic rule. So after we've done that, we immediately have to do attrition, because it says polarization, attrition. So the attrition only happens in countries that are in civil war, and that marker looks like this. Yeah. But there are no civil war countries, so we can skip that attrition phase, or attrition thing. Then we actually deal new cards and return off-map troops back to the track. There are no off-map troops. Those would be the troops that are in this box, you know. And any regime changes from a green regime change marker goes to a tan regime change marker. So they comes in 2 flavors. You put it down in the green side, and then it flips to the tan side. And it's difficult to remove it, so it will stay tan for quite some time, I think. So if I put the country into civil war, then I could end the regime change marker there. But yeah. So in this game, the US would draw 8 cards, but the Jihadist player will draw 7 cards, because now the marker is down here. And then we will play another round. Now I think I have been able to show off most of the differences already. The only thing that we haven't done, well, there are different events, of course, but we haven't looked into these 2 markers, the civil war and the caliphate markers. So when the civil war happens in a country, then I have to do different things. Events put country into civil war. So what happens then, if the governance is good, it will become fair. And if the governance is Islamic rule, it will become poor. So it will move away from those 2 extreme points. Otherwise, it will stay as they are. If the country is unmarked, it will be tested to find out what the governance level is, of course. And you have to play the marker there. So when civil war also happen, if there are any awakening and reaction markers there, the awakening markers would be replaced with militia, and the reaction marker would be replaced with sleeper cells. If there are regime change markers there, they would be removed. So these guys goes away. Everything else stays there. If there are cells, troops, cadres, militia, besieged regimes marker, caliphates, aid markers, they all stay there. All right. So then what happens now? Okay, so that's of course a way to get the country away from either good or Islamic rule, but it also is a way to remove regime change markers. Of course, now there is still an auto recruit there, but now every time you go through a phase or end of round, you have to do attrition checks. So in that way, so what happens during an attrition check is that you count up your troops and your militias on one side, or cells on the other side. So every group of 6 inflicts 1 hit, and you have to remove 1 game piece. So that sort of and the Jihadist player, for every hit, have to remove 2 game pieces. So that sort of reflects that there is, you have to keep putting money, resources into the country that is at civil war in order to keep it going. If you just leave it there, attrition will take it away. If there are below 6, you have to roll a die, and you can still have attrition effects. So the last thing that we haven't talked about is the caliphates. So when an event places 3 or more cells in a country that is either at civil war, has a regime change marker, or is at Islamic rule, in that country, then the jihadist player can declare a caliphate with the capital there. The capital gives him +1 resources on the victory track. That's good for him. Any adjacent country which qualifies according to these rules are placed in the caliphate as well. It has to be adjacent so that it stretches out, sort of connecting. Now, you get resources for placing the capital, but not for the capital country markers. And the only benefit being a caliphate country for the jihadist player is that certain events cannot be played there. For instance, this US event called Backlash, where I can select a plot in a Muslim country, and that plot can subtract rather than add funding to the jihadist player. That will hurt him, but it has this symbol up here saying, well, if this is a caliphate country, it can't be played there. So there is some kind of protection for the jihadist player then from events firing in those caliphate countries. Now, as countries surrounding the capital falls in or out of this state, or the qualifying state, they can be in or out of the caliphate as well. Some event cards in the deck have this minaret icon here, meaning that they can be used to declare the caliphate. I think that actually gives a pretty good overview over all the changes now in this game. So that was round 1. I just played 1 round. It took some time, but demonstrated quite a bit of the new things with the game. So I hope that interests you. I can only give this game 2 thumbs up because I really enjoy how it plays out. I find the bot hard, but beware, it is quite, how shall I say, emotional, can be quite tough, mentally stressing to play because the events that play out are quite recent in history. You will get events that has happened in Europe, terrorist event that has happened in Europe quite recently, and even in the US, and that may or may not be okay for you to play. If you want to go further back in time, you can always play the original game without the expansion. And you can still use the bot chart. Some of the markers here has a +1 behind it, meaning it only is applicable to the first, or actually to the base game, while this one has 2, so it's only applicable to the expansion. So this bot is supposed to be clearer. Maybe it's better, maybe it's not. I'm not sure. I can't really say anything about that. I don't know. Variety is good. You can always use the old bot also if you like. There's variety is so good. Good with variety. So having said that, hope this piqued your interest. And I hope to see you back in another video quite soon. Bye bye for now. Late Night Gamer signing off.